Acts chapter 16, verses 9 to 15, Paul's vision to go to Macedonia, and then Lydia is immersed. It begins in verse 9. Ke orama diatis niktos, ophthito Pavlo, and a orama, a vision by the night, appeared to Paul. A vision, number 3705, orama, appears 33 times in the Bible. We have different types of vision. The first visions mentioned were oral, where a person heard something. That was Abraham in Genesis 14:1, and then later Jacob at night in Genesis 46:2. Then there were visions, signs, and miracles that were tied together in many places without going into the specifics of the visions. That is in Deuteronomy 26, verse 8. Paul sees a man called Ananias in Damascus who will lay hands on him and heal him from his blindness. It doesn't say if it was oral or visual or what, but it's in Acts 9:12. You can check that out. Then there are visions by night. In Numbers 12:6 it says, "By God, if there should be a prophet among you to the Lord, I will be made known to him in a vision, and in sleep I will speak to him." And then in Daniel 4:13 he says, "I viewed in a vision of the night upon my bed, and behold, a sentinel, even a holy one from heaven, came down." In Daniel 7:13 it says, "I viewed in a vision of the night, and behold, the clouds of the heaven, and one as Son of Man was coming." Then there are visions during the day. Acts 10:3, it says, "He beheld in a vision openly about the 9th hour of the day an angel of God entering to him and having said to him, 'Cornelius.'" This was Cornelius, the centurion who was going to interact with Peter. Then there is a reality versus what is a vision. In Acts 12:9, it says, "But he thought he was seeing a vision." That was Peter when he was in prison, but he was actually led out by an entity called an angel. So this vision by night appeared to Paul. "Anir tis in Macedon estot." A certain man of Macedonia was standing. Now Macedonia is in Greece. We'll go up to our map here, and we see Macedonia over here. Currently he's in Troas, and he will take the boat over to past Thermothraki, spend the night, and then leave the next day, Neapolis, and then end up in Philippi. So the man was standing, appealing to him, "Ke legon," and saying, "Diavas is Macedonian." Having passed over into Macedonia, voithison imi, help us. In the imperative, help us. We need help. In verse 10, now there were no Christians there, so exactly who the us was, people that were praying to God, we'll find out maybe who they were in the last part of this section. Verse 10, "Os they to orama ethan," and as he beheld the vision, of Theos as the Tisomen exalthin eastin Macedonian. Immediately we sought to go forth into Macedonia, Silas and Paul. And sem vivazontes oti proskeklite imas o Kyrios evangelissaste avtus, and instructed that the Lord has called on us to announce good news to them. So they have now received this instruction in this vision. I personally have not had a vision, but I certainly want to tell people the good news about Jesus Christ, and I do it the best way I can. Do these videos, little brochures I put outside for people to see that has the Apostolic Bible on it, where you can get it free to download. And talking to people is all sorts of ways to get the good news out. You can probably come up and find a better way than I have. In verse 11, anakthentes un apo tis Troados, having embarked then from Troas, epithromisamen is Samothrakein, we ran direct unto Samothrace, running direct. That's a nautical term. I had a sailboat, so I know all about these nautical terms. The wind is directly behind a boat, and it pushes it forward, whatever direction it is going, and that's called running. There is also beating, where you go into the wind. It's a possibility with sailing. You can go into 45 degrees into the wind by the way the sails are built and so forth, and the rudder of the ship. But here they had a wind behind them. So they end up on this island, Samothrakein, which is a mountainous area. It goes up to 5,000 feet. I think it's about 11 miles long. Troas, where they left from, is on the mainland, and it was a Roman colony. At one time was 100,000 people, created by Augustus, was going to be made into one of the major cities in the Roman Empire, over 1,000 acres in size. And later Paul comes back to that area, and the story of Eutychus in Acts 20 verses 5 to 12 is mentioned there. But the Ottomans, the Turks, plundered the area, took all the stones to build other buildings and so forth, and there's very little left of this part of Troas. You can go into Wikipedia, see more about it there. Samothraces was 11 miles long. As I said, it was a mountain area going up to 5,000 feet, about 2,500 people on that island. And it continues, Tite epiusi is Neapolin, and the following day to Neapolis, which means new city. And this was on the Macedonian coast, a little small port for the boats to come in. It's near today's large major city of Kavala, and it was a small harbor for Philippi, and there was hardly any remains of this little town of Neapolis today. Next in verse 12, Akithan the is Philippos, and from there to Philippi. Well, let's go back to our map here of Macedonia. So they're at Troas, they go over here to Samothrake, then they come up to Neapolis, which no longer is anything there, and then up to Philippi. Etes esti proti tis meridos tis Macedonias polis, a colonia, which is a foremost city of the portion of Macedonia. It's a colony. Philippi was a colony of about 10,000 people, they believe, at the time of Paul. A colony, a colonia, is more of a settlement by the Romans, mainly veterans that have given land grants. They come to a small place or an area, sometimes they're larger, and they will fortify the area in a grid pattern, and this is what it was at Philippi. Here's a picture of it. the ruins right now. It's all in ruins. It was named after Philip II, Alexander's father of Macedonia. And there was a battle right before Paul came, well, maybe 100 years before, but between Anthony and Octavian after the death of Julius Caesar, between Anthony and Octavian, and against Brutus and Cassius in 42 BC. Philippi, the ruins today, are near the modern city of Kavala, which is a large city. So Philippi is a tourist area to go see. But after Paul, Christianity came and churches were built. The first church actually was built in Philippi in Europe. But in 619 AD, an earthquake took place which destroyed all of the city. It was then abandoned and then finally overgrown. But in 2016, the ruins were made a World Heritage Site. So here, what it's saying here is a foremost city, yes, but now it's a ruin. And it continues, Emen they in avti tipoli, via trivontes imeras tinas. And we were in this city spending time some days. So quite a bit of time. In verse 13, Tite imera ton salvaton, exilthomen, exo tis polios para potamon. And on the day of the Sabbath, we went forth outside the city by the river, which was probably the Gangitis River, a small river that was there and still around that area. U enomizato prosevki ine, of which we thought prayer to be. Now, there was no Christians, so they were looking for fellow Jews. Ke kathisantes, and having sat down, elalumen tes sinel thuses genexi. We spoke to the women having gathered together there. Then it continues in 14, Ke tis geni, and a certain woman, onomati Lydia, another name that many women give to their girls today for thousands of years, Lydia, beautiful name. She was a porphyropolis, a seller of purple goods, and for making all sorts of dresses and hangings and maybe even tents, I'm not sure, because Paul was a tent maker, and so he might have been interested in what she was doing. And it was she was from the Polios Thyatiron, the city of Thyatira, which is in western Turkey. She wasn't from this city, so she's probably there doing business. Sevomeni ton theon, who worshipped God. Now, worshiping, if you looked up this word 4576, you'll see that it's basically following after a god. Now, we use worship by the King James translators for doing obeisance. It has nothing to do with music, and this worshiping just means you're following a god. It has nothing to do with music. So today's word of worship is probably not very good for this Greek word, but I can't think of a sevomeni, what a better word there would be, who followed after wouldn't be very good because it's more of a spiritual thing that they're doing. But it's not doing obeisance, where we see worship in the King James being used for proskenevo, a word for doing obeisance. You put your head to the ground, bow to a higher authority, a head of the family or a governor or a general and so forth. So she was there, and Ikuan was listening. Is o Kyrios the enexe ten cardion prosakin tis laulun menos ipo to Pavlu, of which the Lord opened wide her heart. Now, that's a figure of speech. God's not opening up our heart, and the heart at the time wasn't this organ that we have in our chest, which is a regulator. That was a word that was invented much, much later when people were opening up the bodies and looking at how human was made and giving the different parts names. And they called this regulator, it's inside of here, a heart, a cardia, a cardiac rest, a heart attack. So, but at the time, Old Testament here, it was a place of feeling. I can't explain it too much better, but you had a heart for somebody, a love somebody. It was a place where feelings were kept or developed. And so he opened wide her heart so that she would open up to take in, to take heed to the things being spoken by Paul. Now, this is a condition that we all should have. If a person doesn't have it, it'd be an open, good thing to have, and that would be a heart open to the things of God, rather than a sealed heart, or it's called a hard heart. Again, it's not the organ, but a state of being. So we want to have this open heart to what God has to tell us and things of Jesus, and looking at our lives, looking at the things we're doing, if we're doing things wrong, if things are coming against us. Everything seems to be going wrong in my life. And I see these things, and instead of going out and having a drink or smoking some pot or trying to escape from it, open it up to God now entering in and ask God, come into my heart, come into me and tell me what the things that I need to do to change my life. And open the Word of God, because this is His instrument to come into that open heart, what we're going through right here. So open the heart, and they take in the Word of God. A person will be a lot better. I did that many, many years ago. I was going through a terrible time in my life, and I ended up opening my heart and asking the Lord to come in. I started reading John, and I realized all the things that I had done wrong and missing, but started all over again. In verse 15, Osthe evaptisti ko, and as she was being immersed, ikosaptis, and her house. Well, her house was not being immersed, another figure of speech. The household, her family. Para kalase, she appealed, legus, saying, if kekrin kate, if you have judged me, pistin to kyrio ine, to be trustworthy to the Lord. So now this is a Jewish woman who now has listened to the good news from Paul and wants to go along with the things that he is saying. And she says, Eselthontes is ton ikon mu, having entered into my house, minate, abide, stay there, stay with me, ke paraviasato imas, and she pressured us, and that would have been Silas and Paul. Next, a woman with the spirit of Pythos or Python.